Good afternoon, students. Today we will try to understand what is angular momentum concept. The angular momentum concept, perhaps everybody know what is linear momentum and what is angular momentum concept, and what is the general formula of for angular momentum of a rotating object. These are all things that everybody would have studied at the early classes. And what we will discuss is that the angular momentum of the hydrogen atom is actually quantized. Okay, so this is something that we will try to understand. And you might have studied the Bohr theory or Bohr-Sommerfeld theory, that or which is actually a somewhat modified theory, where the angular momentum is said to be quantized. Okay, and in fact the angular momentum will have the uh, angular momentum for nh cross. Okay, where n is the principal quantum number. That is what we have studied earlier. But as we know, the principal quantum number of hydrogen atom start from n is equal to 1, and then it will go to 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on up to the infinity. But what we are going to learn is something different than what we had learned in the early classes. Okay, so let us look at the angular momentum concept in quantum mechanics. For that, let us start with what is the angular momentum of a classical body which is rotating about a particular center of axis. Okay, let us say that the radius, we have the electron, or we have any, for that purpose you can just imagine the hydrogen atom, Bohr model of hydrogen atom. Let's say the electron is orbiting, and the radius in a circular path in a radius of r. Okay, and as it is rotating constantly, its angular momentum, the direction of the angular momentum basically keep on changing, right? And I hope that everybody knows that the angular momentum is given by the linear momentum multiplied by the radius. That is nothing but the MVR. Okay, and what is the position, what is the direction of the angular momentum? We can actually calculate from the cross product of the position and the linear momentum. Okay, r cross p actually will give you the actual direction of the angular momentum of uh, a particle which is actually orbiting or which is rotating in a circular path. Okay, and r here, r is actually a position vector. It is given as the xi bar plus yj bar plus zk bar. Okay, it is a position of the position vector, and the linear momentum vector is given by pxi I bar, pyj bar plus pz k bar. Okay, this is the linear momentum components, and the cross product of these two things actually will give you the direction of the will give you the products of the angular momentum components. At the same time, we will also get the what is the direction, and the direction is nothing but it is perpendicular to this plane of the board, or in this case, it is in this direction, so it is actually towards you. Okay, so let's say you have a electron is orbiting in the case of hydrogen atom in this fashion. So the angular momentum is actually the perpendicular to this particular circular path. Okay, and for the spherical symmetry problems like hydrogen atom, the angular momentum is actually a constant of motion. This is something that I already pointed out. In other words, the motion of the particle is such that the angular momentum actually doesn't change. Okay, so when it is orbiting in a particular thing, in order to maintain that particular circular path, it tries to adjust its angular moment, its velocity. Suppose if if the radial distance is changing, and it would take some different circular path, or the orbit, that particular orbit, in order to maintain the electron position in that particular circular orbit, the velocity of the electron would be changing. Okay, suppose if the particle is going away from the nucleus, okay, then it will try to reduce its speed so that the angular momentum is maintained, and then it will stays in that particular orbit. Similarly, if it is coming very close to the nucleus, then it has to rotate much faster so that that particular circular path is maintained before it gets actually paired up with the nucleus or the positive charge of the atom. Okay, this is what I mean for this problems like hydrogen atom, where we have seen that only one electron it is present in the 1s atomic orbital, and its angular momentum is actually constant. It doesn't change, right? Now, the question is that we have seen uh, many other operators earlier. Now, let us try to have the angular momentum operators. Okay, angular momentum operators. According to the postulate number 2, for every observable that there is a linear admission operator, and in fact it is also said that if you have a position, you just position vector or position operator x, then it has to be replaced with x itself in order to find the operator. Similarly, in order to find the momentum operator, it is suggested that if you have a px, which is actually a linear momentum component, x component of the linear momentum, it has to be replaced with minus ih cross dou upon dou x, which will be actually give you the quantum mechanical operator. The same procedure that we are going to follow in the case of this particular discussion. So our aim is to find out what is the angular momentum operator. Now, if we know the operator, why we want to know the operator? If we know the operator, only then we can actually allow it to operate upon the wave function, because the hydrogen atom wave function is already known to us, right? It is psi NLM r theta phi. Okay, or in fact RNL of R multiplied by the spherical harmonics, that YLM of theta comma phi, right? That is the wave function. So those wave functions we know. Now if we know the operator, then we can actually see whether the angular momentum is quantized or not. That is the purpose for which we will begin with the finding out the operator for the angular momentum. So again, the angular momentum, again, it is a vector quantity. It can have uh, three different components. Lx, okay, Lx is the x component of the angular momentum, and Ly is the y component, and Lz is the z component. Well, the angular momentum components we can actually find out from this particular determinant. You can actually calculate. It's very easy. You all know very well. Lx is given by Ly pz minus z multiplied by py, and Ly is equal to zpx minus xpz. Lz is equal to xpy minus ypx. What are these things? These are the angular momentum components, and you know how to determine, how to find the determinant, right? So when you are actually looking and you want to find out the x component, then actually you take these two cross. Okay, if you want to find this, then this and that. Okay, and this determinant you have to basically determine, and from that you would get the x component, y component, and z component. And finally, in order to have the quantum mechanical operator, what we have to do, this is something that we have learned in the postulate number 2, right? So px, if you have a px, then that has to be replaced with minus ih cross dou upon dou x to obtain the angular momentum operator for the x component of the angular momentum. Similarly, if you want to obtain the quantum mechanical operator for py, the y component, then we need to replace py with minus ih cross dou upon dou y. Similarly, z component has to be replaced with ih cross dou upon dou z. So we can actually make this substitution. We can make this particular substitution and this. Okay, and similarly this particular object you can substitute here, and similarly, of course, no, we can, I think basically all these three you can substitute. Wherever px occurs, you have to replace with minus ih cross dou upon dou x, and then wherever py occurs, minus ih cross dou upon dou y, and so on. Then we would actually get this object. Lx is nothing but minus ih cross y dou upon dou z minus z dou upon dou y. Similarly, y component is this, and then z component is this. Okay, just very simple concept, nothing to break our head. It's very straightforward. Now, having the angular momentum, as I pointed out already, it's a vector quantity, and then corresponding operator will be nothing but the Lx I bar plus Ly z bar and then Lz k, where Izk and Ijk are the unit vectors, right? Suppose if you want to determine what is the magnitude or the square of the angular momentum vector is given by Lx square plus Ly square plus Lz square, right? If you want to find out what is the vector length of magnitude of the vector, any vector, we take the square of the individual component and then we'll try to sum up, right? That's the same thing. That's since the angular momentum quantity is a vector, then it will have three different components: Lx, Ly, Lz, and then the take the individual squares and then add the three components, which would actually give you the angular momentum, total angular square of the total angular momentum, which is nothing but the magnitude of the angular momentum. Right now, what I just wanted to see is that I just want to verify: are there any angular momentum components that would actually uh, commute with each other? Okay, I just wanted to find out what are the angular momentum components that actually commute with each other. Why we are doing this? Please recall my yesterday discussion. There were two theorems that we have studied and proved. Okay, one of the theorem is that suppose if you have two operators which are actually commuting, then it is possible that they will have necessarily same set of eigenfunctions. And the converse is also true, right? Because these are some of the theorem that we had just wanted to use them to obtain the solution for the angular momentum component. That's the idea. First of all, we will see that whether angular momentum components actually commute or not. Okay, let us start with the Lx and Ly. These are the two angular momentum components. Now the question which we are asking is that, are they commute? Okay, what is the commutation property? Well, Lx Ly minus Ly Lx multiplied by psi, where psi is a arbitrary function. Okay, you just operate, uh, allow it to operate the operators, two operator, one by one. Okay, please remember that AB f of x is equal to BA f of x. Then we say that the operators actually commute. Same thing, but we are using the angular momentum component Lx and Ly. Okay, in this case, we have to find out Lx Ly psi. Similarly, Ly Lx psi. Okay, if the two quantities actually equal to uh, is equal, then we will say that they commute. Otherwise, not. That is what we are going to do. And well, uh, what it was done. There is IH cross, right? Suppose Lx is given by minus IH cross this object minus IH cross y dou upon dou y dou z minus z upon z multiplied by dou upon dou y. This is the object. Similarly, y component means that is nothing but the y component is this. This is the x component. Okay, but then both are actually multiplied by, there is a minus IH cross. The minus IH cross from here and minus IH cross from here, actually I have taken out outside as a common factor. Similarly, Ly Lx is there. There is a minus sign here, and then there is a Ly and Lx. And what is Ly is given here. What is Lx is given there, right? We are just trying to substitute what is Lx Ly, and then we have taken out the common factor IH cross whole square. Okay. Now, what we can do, we can just allow the psi to, we can take the psi inside. you can take psi inside, or before that you can actually multiply also. Either way it is possible. You can take psi inside and multiply it, or else you can just multiply it initially and take psi. Psi is actually operating on the right hand side on this object, on this entire object. This is operator basically. So on this entire operator, it is allowing from the right hand side. Okay, the operator is in the left hand side, and the psi is it is operating on this side. So you have to move inside, okay, and add right side to each term. That is what one should do it. So here what I have done is just I have multiplied first. Okay, multiplied first. So you here 4 terms will come here, 4 terms will come up. Okay, just a multiplication, and afterwards the psi is taken inside. You can see here the psi a function psi is basically taken inside. So we get some all these 8 terms we will be obtaining. Okay, there are 8 terms that we will obtain. Okay, now when you look at these things, for example, the second term you can consider. So second term here, there is a partial differentiation with regard to what? There is a z, right? So therefore, but right side what you have is x. Therefore, it is a constant. You can move this side. That is what this particular term has come into picture, right? Similarly, here there is a z, but then partial differentiation is only with regard to y. Okay, therefore this also you can move the other side, so it doesn't affect much. So that particular term is here. So there is a z here and there is a z square. So dou upon dou y and dou upon dou x. It is given. It is written as the dou square upon dou xy, dou x and dou y. Okay, and then there is a psi. Psi is actually, as I told you, that you have to take inside. That is here, right? So similarly, here you have x, but then partial differentiation is with regard to y. So therefore, you can move this also and then combine the term. So this is done here. So likewise, you can move, except there are 2 terms. Except there are 2 terms. All the terms actually, you can move. You can shuffle like this, and then. But here you can't do it because that you see there is a z, and the partial differentiation is with regard to z. Therefore, this is a one function, this is one function, this is like a dou upon dou z acting upon a product, that is 2 functions, it is acting. Similarly, this term, the first and last terms are actually will contain will actually of the form that the derivative of the product, product. In this case, it is z is one function, the other one is the dou upon dou y. Similarly, here it is z and then the other function is dou upon dou y. So these 2 things actually have to be splitted, but rest of the things you can just do the shuffling. Rest of the things just you do the shuffling what I have mentioned, and remaining thing you just keep it as such. Okay, that is what it is done here. So when you do that, you will get, and then here, since as I pointed out already, it is like a derivative of product, two functions. So you have to basically derivative of first function derivative of the first function multiplied by the second function plus derivative of the second function multiplied by the first function. So that is what it is done here. These 2 terms actually came because of that. And the last term, you can see here there is a negative sign, and then again the same thing. So you can consider these 2, z and the multiplied by dou upon dou y. These are also you can just multiply in the same fashion, and you would get basically these 2 terms. And these 2 terms are actually because of that. Now, if you look at very carefully, so we have some same terms with opposite signs, therefore we can cancel out. For example, yz multiplied by dou square psi upon dou x dou z, that is one term, which is the second term, and here there is another term with a negative sign here. Therefore, both can cancel out. Similarly, xy multiplied by dou square psi upon dou z square. Similarly, xy dou square psi upon dou z square. Similarly, the other one z square multiplied by dou square psi upon dou x dou y. Similarly, z square plus, there is a plus 1 plus dou square psi upon dou x dou y. So the similar terms actually you can cancel out. Ultimately, what you get is this object. So there is a minus IH cross whole square, right? There is a minus IH cross whole square, and inside you would get only two terms. Rest of everything will be vanished. Okay, what are the two terms? The two terms are y dou psi upon dou x minus x dou psi upon dou y. And from this psi you can take outside, right? This is just arbitrary wave function. Please remember yesterday discussion that we have discussed with regard to the commutation property. If two operators A and B are said to be commuting with each other for any arbitrary function, that is f of x, if AB f of x is equal to BA f of x, right? Where A and B are the two operators. So this wave function, arbitrary wave function, you can just move the right hand side because it is operating on the right hand side, and you can write like this. And further, this minus IH cross whole square, you can just split up and write it like minus IH cross multiplied by minus IH cross. And then this is y dou upon dou x minus x multiplied by dou upon dou y multiplied by psi. And you can realize that what is this object? This object is nothing but the LZ. Okay, please go back and see the individual components of the angular momentum. The Z component is precisely of that object. That means the commutation, the commutator, there is a psi actually, the psi has to be kept it here. So there is a psi that is missed here. So the commutator of Lx and Ly is just the minus IH cross, okay, sorry, IH cross LZ. IH cross LZ is the commutator. Since the commutator is not zero, then we say the individual components do not commute with each other. The individual components do not commute with each other. Similarly, we can also extend this discussion with regard to the other components. Okay, with regard to the other individual component, that is the commutator. We can evaluate the commutator for Ly Lz, and we can very well prove that that object is going to be IH cross Lx. Similarly, Lx, Lz, Lx commutator is given by IH cross multiplied by Ly. Therefore, here, since these are not zero, then we say again the other commutators, other angular momentum components also, other angular momentum operators also do not commute with each other. Let me also tell you one interesting thing which we have learned yesterday itself. Suppose here that if you evaluate what is Ly Lx, it is going to be just negative sign. Similarly, Lz Ly is given by this object. Similarly, Lx Lz is given by minus IH cross multiplied by Ly. Okay, so these are some of the rules or simple formulas that you should remember, because we will be using as we discuss the angular momentum concept further. Okay, now the question is, it is very much evident that with I have showed with regard to the Lx and Ly, but the other things we can prove that they are also not commuting. You take any two and they do not commute, that is for sure. And in fact, we get some object and the commutator is already shown in the previous slide. Now the question is that, are there any angular momentum components commute with each other? This is the question. Are there any angular momentum components commute with each other? Now the answer is yes. Well, you can take the square of the angular momentum, and you can actually take any other component of the individual component. Let's say, for example, Z component is something that you can take up. and evaluate its commutator, and we'll see that we will get 0. The answer for this is actually 0. Therefore, we can say very well that these are commuting. Okay, if you want, maybe I can quickly rush through the derivation of this. Okay, to show you that these two, what are the two? L square. Okay, L square, the square of the total angular momentum commutes with the z component of the angular momentum. That is the thing that we can prove it. Okay, how can we prove this? Well, here, what is L square? L square, the total angular momentum is given by Lx square plus Ly square plus Lz square, comma Lz, right? This is the commutator. So this actually you can write it like this. You can actually split up and write it like this fashion. Okay, there is a Lx comma Ly Lz plus and Ly square Lz, okay, plus Lz square Lz, okay, Lz square Lz. Now, I hope that you would agree that this object, the answer is going to be 0. We can prove that very well. This object, the answer is going to be 0 because that you have Lz square, okay, Lz square, and here there is the Lz, okay. So what is the commutator? Lz square Lz minus Lz square. So since Lz is same, then we can prove that this is going to be actually 0. You can very well prove this. Lz square Lz minus Lz square. So it is essentially Lz cube. This is essentially Lz cube minus Lz cube. What is the answer? The answer is same, 0. Okay. Now it is enough that we can actually evaluate what is the answer for this, and similarly what is the answer for that. If you can evaluate, that is fine. Now, first we will consider the first factor. Okay, of course these are actually expanded. Okay, these are actually expanded, and the other, as I have already shown here, that this is going to be 0. Therefore, we neglect, and then these two objects, if you can find out and then take the summation of these two objects, then that is sufficient. Now I will calculate what is this first, and then later we will calculate what is this. Okay. Now Lx square Lz minus Lz Lx square is the object that we have to find out. Now what I do is that I'm going to add the same quantity and then add, sorry, I'm going to subtract a quantity, and the same quantity I shall add also. This is the quantity I'm subtracting and adding. So please look at this. The first term is Lx square multiplied by Lz. This remains the same. And then Lz Lx square. This also remains the same. What I have done here, this is the object that I have added to the term. Okay, since I am subtracting a quantity and the same quantity is being added to the two terms, then the net result is same. It doesn't affect. Okay. So what is the object actually I'm subtracting and adding? That is Lx, Lz, Lx. That is the object. Okay. Now what we do, we will try to take the common factor. So from this, you can see here, the Lx you can take as a common factor. Okay. Now, which you can write it on the left hand side. Okay. And from these two, Lx again you can take a common factor, but then you have to write it on the right hand side. So that is what done in the next few steps. Okay, so that is what done here. So Lx is taken from the first two terms. Lx is taken as a common factor, and the second two terms Lx again taken, but then this is on the right hand side of the operator. Okay, now further you can simplify that Lx Lz Lx Lz minus Lz Lx. So this is the object that you get it, and here Lx Lz minus Lz minus Lz multiplied by Lx. So these object are it is nothing but the Lx and Lz commutator. Similarly, this object is also Lx Lz commutator. But we know very well what is the answer of this. Lx Lz, the answer is IH cross Ly. Okay, so you can just remember all these things. X, Y, Z. Suppose Lx and Ly and Lz. Suppose if you are asked to find out what is the commutator of these two, then the answer is, okay, if you are asked first is Ly and then commutator of Ly, Lz, then answer is Lx. Okay, the answer is simply Lx, IH cross Lx. Suppose if you are asked Lz, Ly commutator, then this is going to be minus. So if the order is like this, actually, if the order is like this, okay, Lx, Ly, Lz, and then again it will come to Lx. Okay, again it comes to Lx. Suppose if Ly, some people, this is what exactly we find it. Lz, Lx, Lz and Lx, if it is there, then we would the answer would have been Ly. Okay, but then here what is there? Lx Lz is there. Okay, therefore we have to account that substitution, that replacement with a negative sign. So we have a negative sign here. Okay, both places we have minus IH cross Ly is the quantity that we get it, the commutator, that has to be kept here. Now both these two terms, minus IH cross, you can take it as a common factor, and outside you have Lx, and then here there is Ly. Okay, and then plus Ly Lx. So what is this object? Okay, this is the object. This object is nothing but the one of the term that we are trying to calculate. And the second object, that is which is indicated with the red color, that is Ly square Lz minus Lz square Ly, can be evaluated in this fashion, and we can show that this quantity is exactly same as the other quantity, but then it is with a positive sign. Okay, here we found that Lx square Lz minus Lz x square is given by this object, and when you try to evaluate this object, what you get is IH cross, same quantity as this. Only thing is that it is multiplied with it doesn't have any negative sign. Okay, now you remember that we are trying to evaluate Lz. We are trying to evaluate L square, commutator of the L square and L square Lz, and it is shown here that the both object, it is actually same. Therefore, when you add these two things together, it is going to be 0. Okay, therefore we can say very well that the angular momentum, square of the angular momentum, actually commutes with the z component of the angular momentum. Similarly, the same exercise we can also very well prove that the L square commutes with the other individual component Lx. You can prove it. Okay, and please remember this is a vector. At the same time, these are the operators as well. Similarly, L square Ly commutes. So both case again we get the 0. Okay. So the conclusion of this discussion is that the question that we have asked is whether any angular momentum components are actually commuting or not. That is a question we asked, and we found in the first case that the individual angular momentum components, you take any of the two individual angular momentum components, they do not commute, but one of the angular momentum component actually can commute with the square of the angular momentum, that is L square. Okay, that is the take-home message from this. Now, with this background, let me go back to the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian, which we have learned previously. So this is the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian, and it is written slightly different fashion, but don't confuse. So earlier what we have written is that this 1 over r square, it is actually inside. Okay, this, but for the sake of a purpose, basically it is written that the radial component we are trying to actually separate it out. So this is one of the radial thing. R is the 1 over r square is the radial part, so therefore it is written outside, and inside you have 1 over sine theta dou upon dou theta sine theta dou upon dou theta plus 1 over sine square theta dou square upon dou phi square. That is the angular or the spherical harmonic Hamiltonian part. Now this we have learned already when we have discussed about the rigid rotor problem. Thus, this object is nothing but the L square object, the square of the angular momentum, which is given by minus h cross square multiplied by 1 over sine theta dou upon dou theta, sine theta dou upon dou theta plus 1 over sine square theta dou square upon dou phi square. Okay, the angular momentum, square of the angular momentum operator is given by this object. Okay, and further we also uh, we can also find out a relation between the total Hamiltonian and the angular momentum operator. Total angular momentum uh, and the Hamiltonian. So the Hamiltonian is given by this object, and from this you can actually say that since we are saying that this object, this entire object is actually nothing but L square upon minus h cross square. Okay, so there is a nice relation between the total Hamiltonian of the hydrogen atom in spherical harmonics and the angular momentum, square of the angular momentum operator. Okay, so this is the object. Now, what I wanted to say is that the angular momentum, as you can realize here, it depends upon the angles. It depends upon theta and phi. Theta and phi are the angles, and theta is defined to be the angle of the electron or the particle electron, which is defined with which actually varies from 0 to 180, defined to be a positive angle that it makes with respect to positive z axis. Similarly, phi is defined to be the xz plane, the angle which the particle makes with xz plane. Okay, so it is the another angle. So therefore, there is a nice correlation, as you can see here, between the angular square of the angular momentum operator and the angles that occurs in the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian. And again, this is further what we say is that the L square, the angular momentum operator, is nothing but the kinetic energy. Okay, and kinetic energy, and this kinetic energy depends upon the angular motion, and it depends upon the angular motion. Now we can actually, we have already arrived at this type of relation between the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian and also the angular momentum operator. Okay, h is equal to L square upon 2i, which is equal to L square upon 2i, and where the L square is the square of the angular momentum. And now we can prove that the H hydrogen atom Hamiltonian actually commutes with the square of the angular momentum. Okay, the H is the Hamiltonian of the hydrogen atom. We know what is the object it is. That particular operator commutes with the square of the angular momentum. Okay, how? Well, we can prove it. You can see here that H L square minus L square H. Okay, let it allow it to operate upon any arbitrary function, and then we can do this thing. But I am not going to do it because I will take somewhat a simpler step here. Since I know that L square, a relation between L square and the H, I can actually make use of it. Well, H L square, right? So in place of H, I can replace L square upon 2I, where I is the moment of inertia. So L square 2i, L square minus L square upon 2i. Okay, what is the subject? It is just a multiplication, right? You can just prove that its answer is 0. Okay, so 1 over 2i you can take out as a common factor, and then L square, L cube minus L cube, which is equal to 0. So the result is this. So the total energy operator of the hydrogen atom actually commutes with the square of the angular momentum, because the answer is going to be 0. The commutator is going to be 0. And please remember that the L square of the angular momentum operator, it depends upon the angles, okay, theta and the angles. Now, what is the conclusion of this? The conclusion is this: since they are commuting, then it is quite obvious that the individual components also commute. So this we can prove it, but then it's not necessary that we should do all derivation, but we can prove again the total energy operator of the hydrogen atom commutes with the Lx, okay, where Lx is the x component of the angular momentum. Similarly, y component commutes with the hydrogen atom total energy, and similarly z component. Now, why we have done all these things now? The connection between all this discussion is this, okay? The total energy operator of the hydrogen atom is commuting with the square of the angular momentum. Similarly, it is also commuting with the individual angular momentum components. Okay, it is commuting. Both are actually commuting. And we know that from the theorem which we have learned in the last class, we have learned that if we have a two operator and if they are actually commuting, then they will have the same set of eigenfunctions, isn't it? This is the theorem that we have proved yesterday class. Okay, and the converse is also true, that if we have operator with the same set of eigenfunctions, they commute. That is another theorem that we have proved. Okay, now the point I just wanted to draw in this particular context is that what are the solutions of, and similarly I also pointed out one more interesting point, that they will have definite eigenstates. Okay, because they are commuting and they are having the same set of eigenfunction, and because they have the same set of eigenfunction, they have actually precise value, okay, well defined precise values, or in other words, they have the well defined eigenstates. This is also we have learned. So the point I just wanted to draw from you is that since the hydrogen atom solutions, okay, hydrogen atom solutions, we know what are those things. Okay, so those eigenfunctions will be the eigenfunctions of the angular momentum also, isn't it? So this is a very crucial statement I am making. The statement is this, that the hydrogen atom has some solution that we have actually found out. Okay, and since the angular momentum components are commuting with the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian, I am making a statement that the hydrogen atom solutions, what we have actually derived spherical harmonics, are the solutions of the angular momentum. Why? Because they are commuting. We have already proved that if there are two operators and if they are actually commuting, they will have necessarily same set of eigenfunctions. And not only that, they will have precisely well-defined eigenstates. That means from this theorem we can make out that the spherical harmonics are the solutions of the hydrogen atom, especially when you take the angle part, theta and phi, Hamiltonian. For that, actually, we have the solutions of spherical harmonics. Therefore, my point is that the spherical harmonics are the solutions of the angular momentum. So we need not to really work on this problem once again and again, and we can actually, since we have some theorems, already proven theorems, so we can make use of these theorems and we can actually simplify our discussion. Now, keeping this in keeping this in, of course, you can actually do in a sequential fashion and work out. Definitely, it is possible, but necessarily we need not do always. Okay, and further, let me also tell you that what exactly is the LX operator in terms of R, in terms of theta and phi. It is given here. Similarly, the Y component operator, angular momentum. Okay, so already what it is, we have seen in terms of Cartesian coordinates. So far, the angular momentum components are actually not shown in terms of theta and phi. So the spherical I mean the polar coordinates. So the angular momentum operator is given by this object, y component is this object, z component is this object. Okay. Now what I wanted to say is that these this is the operator. Suppose if this operator operates upon the spherical harmonics, then we get some eigenvalue and also multiplied by spherical harmonics back, right? They will, why? Because why I'm saying that, why we are taking the spherical harmonics, because the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian is actually commuting with the angular momentum. Since they are commuting, they will have necessarily same set of eigenfunctions, and I know that hydrogen atom has the spherical harmonics are the solutions hydrogen atom has. One of the solution is the spherical harmonics, other component the radial part, and I can very well say that those spherical harmonics are the also the solutions of the angular momentum. Okay, that is why. Well, we can just allow this operator. Let's say we can take the example of LZ is the LZ is what? LZ is the Z component of the angular momentum operator, that you can allow it to operate upon the spherical harmonics. Please remember that the phi m. Okay, so since the hydrogen atom Hamiltonian is actually commuting with the square of the angular momentum and also the individual angular momentum components, we can actually say one statement. Since the if commuting operators will have same set of eigenfunctions, we can say that the hydrogen atom solutions, what we have derived as a part of hydrogen atom, are also the solutions of the angular momentum that we are going to look at, right? So spherical harmonics are the angle. When you talk about the angle, spherical harmonics solutions are the related to the solutions of the hydrogen atom. Therefore, the same solutions are actually are going to be the solutions of the angular momentum, right? Because they are commuting. Now we can actually find out what exactly is the individual angular momentum components in terms of spherical coordinates, that is the theta and phi. So Lx is given by this object minus IH cross IH cross of minus sine phi dou upon dou theta minus cot theta cos phi dou upon dou phi. Similarly, Ly is this component and Lz is this component. So what is the Lx and Ly, Lz? Well, these are the individual angular momentum operators. So when these operators operate upon the spherical harmonics, we will get the eigenvalues multiplied by the eigenfunctions back. Why? Because we already learned two theorems in the last class, that if you have a commuting operators, and they will have necessarily same set of eigenfunctions, and since they are having same set of eigenfunction, they will have a definitely well-defined sharp values or the precise eigenstate or eigenstates, right? So based on that, what we can do, we can allow all these individual angular momentum operators to operate upon the respective spherical harmonics, and whatever we get, those are going to be the solutions of the uh, those values, or the eigenvalues are going to be the angular, are going to be the energy or the angular momentum components of the corresponding object, right? So that is what we have we have discussed, we are going to discuss now. Now what we can do, we know the spherical harmonics has two parts. One is r and one is theta and phi. And phi function, as you can see here, uh, the z component of the angular momentum operator has the phi. Now what I can do, we can allow this angular momentum z component operator to operate upon the spherical harmonics, that is especially the phi m of phi, that is of the general form 1 over square root of 2 pi e to the power im phi, where m can vary from 0 plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2 and so on. Now when you allow this to operate upon this one, then this object is nothing but the IH cross dou upon dou phi. Angular momentum operator in terms of spherical coordinates, it is given by this. Now you can do this. Of course, this is the partial differentiation with regard to the right hand side wave function, but the wave function contain only the phi variable. Therefore, we can say that there is no need of this partial differentiation notation. You can just do one-time derivation of this function. So when you do this, then what you get is this. Basically, im phi will come in, and then function will be, we will get back, right? Im will come back, and then there is IH cross already. So I, that is I square, okay, and mh cross e to the power im phi. E to the power im phi is nothing but the phi m, right? This is nothing but the phi m of phi, right? That means, well, you can actually simplify this minus I square. I square is minus 1, so there is a negative sign occurring. Therefore, both cancel out. It is just the mh cross. Okay, so Lz operator, which correspond to the z component of the angular momentum, when it operates upon the spherical harmonics, that is especially on the phi function, we will get mh cross eigenvalue, and then we will get back eigen function. And similarly, even when this z component of the angular momentum operator operates upon the spherical harmonics, which contain theta and phi, still we get the mh cross eigenvalue. Even if it is operating upon the total wave function which contain r theta phi, still we get the mh cross. Why? Because this Lz is only having a partial differentiation with regard to phi. Therefore, the other variables, that is r phi, r theta, do not affect, and therefore we will get the same eigenvalue multiplied by the eigenfunction. Now, similarly, we can extrapolate this discussion to the total angular momentum. The total angular momentum is L square, right? The square of the angular momentum. You can allow it to operate upon the spherical harmonics, right? When it operates upon the spherical harmonics, we get the eigenvalue of the form L into L plus 1 multiplied by H cross square. Okay, so this is the one eigenvalue, we get it. Okay, now this particular object, that is L multiplied by L into L plus 1 multiplied by H cross square, is referred to as the square of the angular momentum, which actually nothing but the magnitude of the angular momentum. Okay, the magnitude, if you want, that you can take the square to the other side, it becomes the square root. So the magnitude of the angular momentum vector is given by square root of L into L plus 1 H cross. Okay, as you know that the value L changes from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. That means the angular momentum is is said to be quantized. Why? Because the L is quantized. Since the L is having a discrete numbers, only certain numbers of L values are allowed, then the total angular momentum is quantized. And in fact, the angular momentum can be, if you try to make the measurement, you may get one of these numbers, that is either 0 or square root of 2 H cross, or square root of 6 H cross, or square root of 12 H cross, and so on, depending upon the value of the L. Similarly, the z component of the angular momentum is given by mh cross, where m can run from 0 plus or minus 1 plus or minus 2 plus or minus 3 and so on. So accordingly, we can have the z components, one of these z components, that is 0 plus plus or minus 1h cross, plus or minus 2h cross, plus or minus 3h cross, plus or minus 4h cross, and so on, right? So again, this is quantized. The z component of the angular momentum, again, this is said to be quantized because of the angular momentum quantum number L. Okay, and further it will have 2L plus orientations. Okay, 2L plus 1 orientations are there. Now, how these angular momentum is, what we have found is different from the so-called angular momentum concept, which was actually proposed by Bohr and then which was modified by a couple of other people. Well, according to the Bohr-Sommerfeld theory, the angular momentum is actually quantized, which is actually the modified theory of the Bohr theory, according to which angular momentum can be nh cross, where n is the principal quantum number. But here what we found is that the angular momentum can be 0. Okay, for all L is equal to 0, the angular momentum is going to be 0. Okay, that is not actually envisaged by the Bohr-Sommerfeld theory. Okay, so this concept is totally different than the classical picture. Why? Because classically a rotating object will have angular momentum. We know that, which is governed by MVR formula, where is the mass is the rotating body, m is the rotating body mass, and v is the velocity, and r is the radius. Okay, if you have confined your discussion for a particular particle, then m and v momentum is same. Okay, only the factor which determines the angular momentum is the radius. Well, when you talk about the angular momentum of the electron, it can be okay, electron can be, or the particle can be at the rest, or it can be moving. If it is rotating, then it will rotate in a certain orbit, certain circular path. Then r will be changing accordingly. It will have some amount of angular momentum. So the point I want to say is that if it is at rest, the angular momentum can be 0. Okay. On the other hand, if it is rotating, then the angular momentum accordingly it will have it. So what is changing is the r. R is the radius. Okay, r is the radius. So since the r radius can be anywhere between 0 and L, all possible values of angular momentums are actually possible according to the classical physics. Okay, according to the classical physics, the angular momentum is not quantized. Why? Because the radius is not quantized. Because the radius can be anywhere between 0 and infinity, therefore the angular momentum is not quantized. But then, according to quantum mechanics, what we are saying that it is quantized, and also we are saying that unlike what was proposed by the other person, Bohr-Sommerfeld theory, that the angular momentum can be 0. Okay, it can be 0. Okay, further what we can say is that we can measure one of the angular momentum component, but we cannot measure the other components simultaneously because they do not commute. That is also a very a quite obvious factor. And how these angular momentum components are actually arranged in a space that we can actually visualize. And this particular concept, what we call it as a space quantization. Okay, space quantization. The angular momentum components actually will arrange in the space with respect to first to z-axis in different orientations of a particular level. Okay, if L is equal to 1, then the length of the vector angular momentum, it can be square root of 2h cross. Okay, that is the length. So, and accordingly, if L is equal to 1, the z components can be either minus h cross, 0, plus h cross, right? Now, how do we represent in a diagram? Well, we can represent these things in a diagram like this. So let us consider this is our z-axis and y-axis. Now, we have to draw the length of the square root of 2h cross vector. Okay. Now, anybody can draw that, but then how do we draw that? So we have to draw those vectors such that it makes a projection in one case minus 1h cross on the z-axis. The other case, it makes a projection of 0. Similarly, the other case, it makes a projection of plus 1 h cross. Okay, are you following? So there are three different ways in which actually we can draw the vector, angular momentum vector, that is such that actually the projections are going to be minus 1 h cross, 0 and h cross. So this is the way that we represent these things. Okay, so if the angular momentum vector is pointing z component, if it is pointing in the z component becomes 0 in the xy plane, so that is actually 0. The other two possible situations are actually this one. Okay, so the angular momentum vector of the same length is drawn, but then it is making a projection of plus h cross on the on the z-axis, and the other one you can see it is written downwards, but still it will make the same magnitude of the projection on the z, but yeah, that is minus h cross is the projection that it makes on the z-axis. So in which way these things are actually different? Well, we can only say that these are different only with regard to the spatial arrangement. Other than that, all these three vectors have precisely same amount of energy. Okay, all these will have same amount of energy. There is no difference in terms of energy. Why? There is no difference in terms of energy. Only the spatial arrangement is different. So what is the kinetic energy? The kinetic energy doesn't change it. Kinetic energy is actually related with the angular momentum, and it is square of the angular momentum. It is nothing but the L square upon 2I is the factor. Now the angular momentum in three cases, it is going to be same. How much it is? It is square root of h cross. Square root of 2h cross. Okay, in the three case, in the three different orientation, the angular momentum vector is having the precisely same amount of angular momentum. Okay, that is square root of h cross. Okay, had it been the case that if the angular momentum is different for three different things, then the situation would have been different. Okay, angular momentum and the kinetic energy both are related, but the angular momentum in three different cases, it is actually same. It is not changing. Therefore, the total energy of the system doesn't change. That is the reason why that the total energy of the hydrogen atom is only depends upon principal quantum number, none of the other quantum numbers. Why? Because their orientation with respect to space, with respect to a particular axis which you have defined is different. That's the only fact. Other than that, everything remains same. Now we can ask the question at this point that what is the angular momentum component of Lx? Similarly, what is the angular momentum component Ly? Well, if you ask me a question like this, then I would say that I don't know. Why? Because we can only talk about one particular angular momentum component, but not the other two. Why? Because the way it is represented in this particular diagram, you are tempted to draw a projection the moment, let's say, suppose if I ask you what is the Ly, then you may say, sir, this is the Ly. Okay, this is the Ly, but then you can't actually precisely define like this. Why? Because they do not commute. Please remember that Lz is already defined. What is Lz? Lz is the projection. This is the Lz. This is precisely defined. Suppose if you define the other one also, then what will happen is that the uncertainty, it violates the uncertainty. Okay, so there won't be any uncertainty in the Ly or neither in the Lz. Therefore, the product, the uncertainty's product actually becomes zero. That actually, in fact, violate the Heisenberg uncertainty relations. Therefore, what is possible is that, okay, when you are in a particular orbit, then we can only talk about the total angular momentum of that particular object. Okay, since it is rotating, then what is the total angular momentum that we can talk about it. Okay, and in fact, the length of the angular momentum or the magnitude of the angular momentum can be estimated by using square root of L into L plus 1 multiplied by h cross. Okay, that is one thing we can do. Similarly, we can also do, we can also talk about another point. Well, there is another component. One of the angular momentum component, okay, is this, and it is the projection at which it is making with the positive z-axis. It can be discussed. Other than these 2 points, we can't talk any other aspect with regard to angular momentum components. Why? Because the individual components do not commute. Okay, the individual components do not commute. Had it been the case that they are actually commuting, then the situation would have been different. As per the theorems which we have learned in the last class, if you have two operators which are commuting, they will have the same set of eigenfunction, and then they will have a precisely same precise eigenstates. But these, what we learned that the Lx and Ly do not commute. Similarly, Ly and Lz do not. Lx and Lz do not commute. Therefore, they will not have precisely same values. Right? So the points which you should remember is that we cannot talk about anything about the uh, Lx and Ly. We can only talk about one of the angular momentum component, Lz. And please remember that there is no specificity with regard to the z component. There is no specificity with regard to z component. Okay, please recall that z is the axis which we have defined when we started our discussion with regard to polar coordinate system. Okay, suppose if that axis which we have defined is a y-axis, well, the total discussion would have been in y, in terms of y, and if it is the x, then it is x. There is no specificity about these axes. Please remember that the coordinate system, anything that we come across, that it is defined for our understanding, to understand the concept, and then to visualize in a better way. Okay, that's all. It is, we have defined it. So if you want, you can keep a coordinate system. If you don't want, you can remove it. That you can do. Okay, so during the process, in order to have some kind of understanding about the position of the particle, and we thought, switch over to polar coordinate system, and then we have defined 3 variables, and one of the variable is actually defined with regard to positive z-axis. Had it been the case, if that was actually the z-axis, y-axis, then this component, it could have been Ly. If it is x-axis, this component which we are talking about could have been Lx. Okay, so please remember that there is no specificity of the axis, or therefore there is no specificity about the angular momentum component. So many times I have written that Lz, Lz, Lz. So don't confuse that. Lz can be Lx or it can be Ly also. Only point you should remember is that one of the angular momentum component can be determined, and its spatial orientation with regard to z-axis can be discussed and then visualized pictorially. That's all. There is no specificity with regard to the z-axis. Well, we can continue discussing the other space quantization of the other orbital, that is the L is equal to 2. When L is equal to 2, the length of the vector can be square root of 6 h cross. Okay, now since L is equal to 2, then this length of the vector, this much length of the vector can orient in 5 different ways. What are those? Minus 2 h cross, minus 1 h cross, 0, plus 1 h cross, plus 2 h cross. So we have to draw a length of vector, that is square root of h cross in the, okay, you have to draw it, and then you have to draw these things such that it actually makes a projection on the z-axis, either minus 2 h cross or minus 1 h cross, 0, 1 h cross, 2 h cross. Well, these things are drawn here. So these are the angular momentum components. How these are different? These are different only with regard to their spatial arrangement. Okay, so this is the angle. You can't draw the angle as you like it, because these are actually angles. Okay, if you change the if you change the direction accordingly, the angle is changing. That means it's a the length on its projection is going to change. Its projection on the z-axis is going to change. For example, this vector you can draw here also. With the same vector you can draw here also. If you try to draw here, that will be slightly different. That will be slightly different. Therefore, its internal angle actually is going to change. That is not possible. Okay. So these 5 vectors of the same length can be arranged in the space such that their internal angles makes the projection either minus 2h cross, minus 1h cross, 0, 1h cross, and 2h cross. Okay. Well, we can talk about many things as we like it as a theoretical chemist or a physicist, but then unless a theory is substantiated with the experiment, we don't believe and nobody believes it. Okay, and then there must be an evidence that the angular momentum is quantized. Okay, there must be an evidence that the angular momentum is quantized. Well, you remember that the principal quantum number n is quantized and n can be 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. Then what about, now we have realized that the angular momentum again it is quantized. If it is quantized, it must be supported by some theory. So how do we prove this? Well, we can prove this if you have an electron and then if it is rotating, then it is basically any charged particle. If it is orbiting or if it is rotating, it is treated like a tiny magnet. And then when electron is actually revolving with a radius of r, basically the current which passes through the loop is given by Ia. Okay, and basically it behaves like a tiny magnet, and then the strength of the magnetic field can be estimated. Well, any charged particle, whether it's a positive charge or negative charge, if it is rotating, then it is treated like a tiny magnet. Then the strength of the magnet is determined in terms of the magnetic moment. In terms of the magnetic moment. And the magnetic moment is given by, in this particular case, the current which is passing through the loop multiplied by the area with which it is making. Okay, so this is just electromagnetism basics. Please try to recall. And the electron is a charged particle, negatively charged particle, and it is orbiting. Therefore, there is a current generation. At the same time, since it is a charged particle is rotating, it behaves like a tiny magnet, and then the strength of the magnetic moment is given by Ia, where I is the current which passes through that loop, and A is the area with which it is making. Now, I is given by area, right? Area is A is equal to pi r square. A is equal to pi r square. What is I? What is I? I is the nothing but a qt. I is nothing but the charge per unit time. Charge per unit time. So charge is nothing but a q. Since we are talking about electron, the charge is given by E. So ET. And what is E? What is T? T is nothing but the time which it takes to complete one particular cycle. The time it takes to complete one particular cycle. That can be, how can we estimate that cycle? Well, we know that the velocity of the particle or the electron with which it actually orbiting, that is v, and then the distance, how much it is traveling, it is known, that is 2 pi r, because the circumference of the circle is given by 2 pi r. So therefore we can actually v by d, that is the distance, is actually 2 pi r, v is the velocity. Therefore the time is given by the time that the electron takes to complete one particular cycle is given by v by 2 pi r. V by 2 pi r. Okay, that you can substitute in the current expression. So this particular thing you can substitute in the current expression, then we will get this type of expression. So the dipole moment is given by I multiplied by A, where A is the pi r square, but I is given by this particular, I is given by Qt, okay, I is given by Qt, Q is nothing but E, and T is given by V divided by 2 pi R, okay. Now, you can substitute all these things, and then we will have a relation for the dipole for the magnetic moment, okay, and magnetic moment is given by VE divided by 2 pi r multiplied by pi r square, and if you multiply this number and then multiply and divide the numerator and denominator with m, what you get is E by m multiplied by mvr. And what is mvr? Mvr is the angular velocity. Angular velocity is the mvr, and that you can replace with L. And further, let me tell you, the dipole moment, the magnetic moment is actually negative. Why? Because uh, the angular momentum and the magnetic momentum will be both are in opposite directions. Therefore, we can actually take that particular concept by placing a negative sign. So the dipole moment is related with the angular momentum in this expression. Like, you know, it is minus E by 2m multiplied by L. Okay, please remember the angular momentum according to quantum mechanics, it is a vector quantity. It is a vector quantity, and just now we have seen that it is quantized. Just now we have seen that it is quantized. That means it can have the length of square root of L into L plus 1 H cross. Square root of L into L plus 1 H cross. Okay, now this is the basis of for doing an experiment to see that the angular momentum is actually really present. Okay, well, people have done these experiments. Well, you might have studied what is Zeeman effect, what is Stark effect, and these experiments are actually started with the Zeeman effect. People have noticed that when uh, the splitting of the energy levels eigenstate further into linear lines in presence of magnetic field and in presence of electric fields are actually studied. So the splitting of the energy level in presence of the magnetic field is known as the Zeeman effect. Okay, Zeeman effect, and the splitting is actually directly proportional to the applied magnetic field strength. The applied magnetic field strength. Now you can see here that suppose if you take an example of L is equal to 2 case, so we can anticipate there are 5 different energy states. So the 5 different energy states are just shown here. That means if we can actually promote these electrons into higher energy levels, then we can have transitions, and these transitions, if we are able to detect, then that is really good, right? So these experiments were really done by many people, and this is what this is a summary of what was done. For example, the zinc is the element, and then it should show a triplet. Similarly, sodium is actually when it is passed through when it is passed through the magnetic field, very strong magnetic field, then the splitting of the energy levels is taken place. Okay, and this is showing that in absence of magnetic field, there is no splitting. Okay, beams are same. This is for the case of zinc, and this is the case of for sodium, and this is the case for other one, zinc sharp triplet. So now what you can see, the moment there is no split up. Initially, if the field is absent, magnetic field is absent, there is no split up. But then the moment you switch on the magnetic field, then there is a split up. Okay, there is a split up. And these experiments are actually mainly done with regard to the elements where the L is not equal to 0. For all L not equal to 0, what we expect is that if uh, if they are passed through the magnetic field, then they have to split according to their L value. Okay, they have to split. But then what is observed is that is different. What is observed is different. For example, you can see here in this example itself, there is a sodium. there is a sodium D1 and D2 lines are there. This D2 line actually split into two. Okay, there are two sets of lines, right? And similarly, many other elements were actually noticed. Then that is actually lead to the much more comprised experiment that is called Stern-Gerlach experiment, which actually ultimately revealed the fact that the electron is having a spin. Electron is having a spin. Now, according to the formula which we have seen, the magnetic moment directly proportional to the angular momentum of the orbital, okay, or of the atom which you are discussing. For example, if the outer electron is located in a orbital L, then it is having angular momentum, right? If it is presenting in a D, then there is an angular momentum. If it is present in F, then it is angular momentum, right? Suppose if it is present, if the outermost electron is actually entering into the s orbital, then for s orbital the angular momentum is 0, because L is equal to 0 means the angular momentum is 0. Therefore, the dipole moment, what do you expect? You expect that the dipole magnetic moment is 0. Okay, for s orbital, for s orbitals, since it is a spherically symmetric, there is no angular momentum. There is no angular momentum. In fact, since there is no angular momentum, the dipole moment, that means it doesn't behave like a tiny magnet. So the magnetic moment of such all s orbital is 0. Okay, but what is observed is something different in when people have done experiments. And this is a kind of this is an experiment which was actually conceived by Stern initially. Of course, the Stern actually worked with Max Born as an assistant, and he conceived this experiment. What he conceived as that uh, to this type of instrumentation arrangement that he has conceived. That experiment was later done by Gerlach. Again, he is also German. Both are Germans. It was done. This experiment was done in Frankfurt. And this experiment is very simple. As you can see here, that a beam of electrons, a beam of atoms are actually passed through a slit and then through a magnetic field, and then backside you have a detection system. Okay, here thermally you can just evaporate the atoms. This experiment actually was performed with the silver atoms. This experiment was performed with the silver atoms. If you can just remember and recall the electronic configuration of silver, the atomic number is 47. The penetrating electron will be entering into the s orbital. Okay, that means there is no angular momentum. If there is no angular momentum, then what you should expect? What you should expect is that that there should not be any deviation when they are passing through the magnetic field. Okay, so we should not see any deviation from the original behavior, original path. Okay, why? Because little bit of magnetism is required. Well, as I told you that if there is angular momentum, then that particular atom actually behaves like a tiny bar magnet. Okay, tiny bar magnet. Now, if you are passing through if you are passing any a tiny magnet through a magnetic field, they try to make a motion, and that motion what we refer to as the precessional motion. The precessional motion is nothing but it's like a gyroscopic motion. Or maybe you can just recall your childhood days that the spinning top motion is the precessional motion. So the rotating axis is keep on changing. Just recall the way in which the spinning top is rotating, right? The axis actually keep on the top is rotating, but then at the same time the rotating axis is also keep on changing with time. So this tiny bar magnet, the moment they enter into the magnetic field, they try to align with respect to the poles. But then at the same time, that if there is only single component, if there is a single component, then what will happen is that they will try to align with respect to magnetic field, and if the magnetic field is homogeneous, and there will be a same amount of force exerting on the magnetic field, and there is a torque, and then the torque is actually same as the other one, and as a result of which usually we don't see any deflection, simply they just pass through. Suppose if there is angular momentum, and if you place it in a inhomogeneous medium, then the situation would be different. Okay, but the what is the difference is what is the actual interesting thing that this Stern-Gerlach experiment reveals is that they had taken a silver atom. There is no angular momentum. There is no angular momentum. But when it is passed through homogeneous thing, nothing has happened. But then when it is passed through the inhomogeneous magnetic field, please remember that how these things are different. Well, if you pass through the homogeneous magnetic field, these results, you don't see any deflections. Why? Because the torque is same, and then you don't see any deflection. But then if it is inhomogeneous deflection, the force which is exerted on the tiny bar magnet by the north pole or the south pole, there will be variation. That actually leads to some type of deflection. That is why it is recommended that this experiment should be done in a inhomogeneous magnetic field. So when the particle is passing by, then what they have seen is that since there is no angular momentum for the silver atom, they found they expected that there should not be any deviation, even if you are passing through by a inhomogeneous magnetic field. But what they have observed is there are two different spots they have observed on the detector. There are two different spots were observed on the detector. Why is it so? The answer is not known to them initially, and in fact, the answer is not given by them. The answer is given by much later by other two people, Uhlenbeck and Goudsmit. Uhlenbeck and Goudsmit, they have given a theoretical explanation for the Stern-Gerlach experiment, and in fact, they have proposed the spin concept. They have proposed the spin concept, and in order to explain the Stern-Gerlach experiment results, okay, the Goudsmit and then Uhlenbeck, they have proposed the spin concept, okay, based on the experimental results. What is the experimental results? When electron, which is present in the case of silver, which is present in the case of silver atom in the s orbital, when it is passed through by inhomogeneous magnetic field, it is showing two different spots. That means there is a split up of the lines, right? That gives that there are two different orientations for the electron. So based on that, they have proposed there are two different orientations for the electron. Okay, and they have in fact said that there is an intrinsic spin. The electron itself, it's not just orbiting; it is also having a spin. Okay, it is having a spin, intrinsic spin, and the spin momentum of the electron, the relation for the, since any spinning body, if any charge is spinning body will have a magnetic moment, and that particular magnetic moment can be estimated by this formula, that is minus E by m 2m, uh, the s square. S square. What is s? S is the uh, spin angular momentum operator. Spin angular momentum operator, which is totally different than what we have seen. L square is the orbital angular momentum, but this is spin angular momentum, which is given by square of the spin angular momentum is given by s into s plus 1 h cross. And further, s is equal to, I mean, the length of the spin vector is given by square root of s into s plus 1 h cross, where s is the spin quantum number, where s is the spin quantum number. Further, as they have observed two different lines, then they propose this s has to be 1. Further, what they propose that s has to be 1, sorry, half. Why? Because there are two different orientations. Okay, in order to account the experimental results, the spin quantum number was proposed, and it has to be 1 by 2. Okay, and the length of the vector can be estimated, and that is nothing but the square root of 3 by 2 h cross. That is the length of the vector. Then the z component of the spin angular momentum, z component of the spin angular momentum, that is sz, can be estimated like the z component of the angular momentum quantum number can be estimated, right? The similar way, here the z component of the spin angular momentum is given by ms h cross, where ms can take value either plus half or minus half. Okay, either plus half or minus half. And further, some of the textbook, it will be written like plus half as the plus alpha state, and then minus half is the beta state. And the spin angular momentum vectors is given by uh, basically sx I bar plus syz bar plus sz k bar. And similarly, we can also estimate the square of the angular momentum, spin angular momentum, that is given by sx square plus sy square plus sz square. And further, like the orbital angular momentum commutation, we can also prove all these rules with regard to spin angular momentum vectors. Okay, sx and sy do not commute. We can also show that sy hz and sz and xy sx. So none of these things actually commute with each other, but the other one, sz square, sorry, s square sz, one of the component will commute with each other. Now uh, this actually is something different, the way in which we are proposing the spin quantum number. Well, the spin is actually a relativistic phenomenon, and we have to admit in this fashion only because the spin quantum number it did not, the way in which we have introduced the spin is slightly different than what we have done with regard to the principal quantum number, with regard to the azimuthal quantum number, and the uh, magnetic quantum number. Okay, so these quantum numbers, when we are trying to solve the Schrodinger wave equation, time independent Schrodinger wave equation of the hydrogen atom, automatically all these quantum number arise, right? So, but then here the way we are introducing is just like based on the concept of the experimental results of Stern-Gerlach experiment. We are trying to propose. Why we are doing this? Because the Schrodinger wave equation, what we have derived, what we have derived yeah, what we have actually started at the beginning of our course, please recall that the Schrodinger wave equation is said to be non-relativistic Schrodinger wave equation. Non-relativistic Schrodinger wave equation. The relativity concepts were not actually involved in this particular equation. Therefore, it cannot definitely give the spin quantum number. Why? Because spin is a relativistic phenomena. Spin is a relativistic phenomena. Had it been the case that the spin is already by default, it is embedded in the equation, right? The Schrodinger wave equation, then we could have got the spin quantum number automatically when we are trying to solve the expression. That did not happen. Why? Because that we have started with a non-relativistic quantum, the Schrodinger wave equation. Well, further, let me also tell you that the total wave function, what we have actually obtained is the psi n lm r theta phi. Psi n lm r theta phi. That was the wave function we thought it. But then now there is another thing that is present, that is the spin. How do you account for that? Well, that has to be accounted with some other function. And let's say that this is the total wave function, what we know already. This has to be multiplied with some other function which is related with the spin of the system, okay, spin of the electron. So since the spin, it can be two different orientations. What are those orientations? Well, we can just quickly draw what is the spin. You can just draw a sphere of this type, Okay, so this is one orientation. You can just imagine that the it is rotating clockwise, or it is rotating anti-clockwise. So these are the two different ways in which it can rotate. On the other hand, if you want to show up in terms of the the conventional fashion, the spin up and then spin down, spin up and spin down. So there are the two different orientation that we can think of. Okay, for two different state, we have to have two different wave functions. That is, this is the one wave function, alpha, which is a function of some spin coordinate. Similarly, beta, that is alpha state is, as I told you, that half plus half state. This is minus half state wave function. So the point what you should remember is that the total wave function of any orbital that you think of, that has to be multiplied with the spin as well. Spin as well. You cannot simply neglect the spin. Okay, spin is a relativistic phenomena. It was not there when we were trying to do it, but then actually there is a spin. Now, how these things are actually different? Well, you can use this. This is the hydrogen atom, 1s atomic orbital. We know that up to here, we know that. Okay, this is known to us. This you have to multiply with alpha times omega, where alpha omega is the alpha state of the spin. Okay, plus the up state or the clockwise direction. And then the other one is the beta. Now, so how do we actually get the spin quantum number? Well, that is not possible. That is beyond our beyond the scope of this particular discussion or the subject. So there is a equation what is referred to as the Dirac equation, and this Dirac equation much later after 1930s or 1940s, that he has written an equation like Schrodinger wave equation. He has written an equation. That equation has relativity. So the relativity is actually, by then it was well established. So the relativity concept was incorporated in the equation, like Schrodinger wave equation. He has written an equation. That equation what we call as a Dirac wave equation. This Dirac wave equation, when you try to solve this Dirac wave equation, the spin quantum number automatically comes out from the solution. So you don't have to introduce like this. Automatically comes out. But then that particular entire discussion is beyond the scope of this particular course, that is the quantum chemistry. Therefore, we don't go to the details. So normally in a MSc chemistry class, so the spin is introduced just like this based on the experimental results, not by other means, like not through the Dirac wave equation. Okay, so with this, I have completed the angular momentum concept. If you have any doubts, maybe you can ask. Otherwise, we can wind up for today.